We go to Cameroon now, where the English-speaking community continues to strike against discrimination. The English-speaking parts of Cameroon have been protesting for almost 6 months, forcing the shutdown of schools and paralyzing businesses. Now, over the weekend, a market in the northwest of Kumbo at St. Augustine's College Junction was burned down. The government has blamed the fires on a group of people in the English-speaking zones. The unrest in the northwest and the southwest began shortly after the English-speaking lawyers and some teachers went on a strike in November. The situation intensified as the strike pulled in other activists who say the English-speaking minority is marginalized. The political conflict has led to an internet shutdown. Now, joining me to discuss this further, I'll start in studio. I have Mr. Milan Atam. He's a member of the Leadership Council of Southern Cameroon. And also joining us on the phone line is Mr. Wilfred Tsang is a programs coordinator of the Cameroon Anglophone Civil Society Consortium. I'll start with you, Mr. Atam. Thank you for coming back to Africa Tonight. We certainly appreciate it. So it appears the strike has been going on for a while now. I mean, the last time that we spoke to you, you're hoping that there would be a solution, but it appears there's no political will. The strike is still happening. Lawyers have been involved in the strike as well, from obviously the English-speaking part of Cameroon.
Yes. Thanks, Audrey. We are in the 6th month of the strike. 3 months without internet for the region of over 7-8 million people. So this is indicative of the fact that the regime in Yaoundé has got no intentions at all of finding solutions to this problem. Instead, as a result of the internet blackout, we are getting more and more the situation of armed forces going into the regions, abducting young men and women and taking them to Yaoundé, many of whom have disappeared and whose whereabouts we are not sure. So we can only assume the worst.
Why do you think particularly the issue of the internet? I understand there's students who are studying in the English-speaking part of Cameroon who can't even be able to download the assignments. They have to literally move to another state that enables them to be able to study and use the internet. Do you think it's a deliberate shutdown by the government? We saw what happened in Egypt with the uprising, how the social media, the internet can be used to mobilize, especially the youth, to work against the government.
Well, this has been 55 years of deliberate cutoff. And as far as we are concerned, the moment the internet was cut off, it was confirmation that the regime in Yaoundé had declared a secessionist tendency. And that is in the basis on which we're working. A lot of the students who try to go over to other parts of Cameroon to try and access the internet get arrested, and then they disappear. So again, there is complete lack of good intentions on the part of the regime in Yaoundé. We are having also, you may have heard about the Silicon Mountain, very much fashioned in the same light as the Silicon Valley in the US, where some of the most brilliant minds on the African continent have actually started to establish business in the internet. I mean, social media, internet business. Most of these businesses have crumbled because 6 months down the line, they've got nothing to show for it. So again, it is not only affecting the people politically, there is a deliberate economic stunting of the people of Southern Cameroon, and it didn't start 6 months ago.
Right, obviously this started from the colonial rule when you had to be separated, the English-speaking part, the French-speaking part,
yes.
Which brings about a very peculiar argument. I mean, take for example here in South Africa, we have students that are fighting for decolonized education that, want to move away from the ways of our colonizers. And yet in Cameroon, we have a nation that is fighting to hold on to these languages that comes from colonialism. But of course, this is needed for issues to do with trade. What other languages? Is there an option that you could perhaps find a solution to see, which way you can go forward?
My argument has always been that we've wasted 55 years during which we could have consolidated our national languages. But then again, it goes back to a very simple colonial tendency. There has never been the political will. How do you, in a country of over 250 languages, cannot find a couple of languages which become national language that foster national integration? And so we have a nation, a country that's been divided along colonial lines, languages which normally we shouldn't be fighting for. And that is why I am not in favor of any kind of argument that says we are fighting for Anglo-Saxon tradition or culture. It is about a people who are being eradicated. And by eradication, it goes beyond what the French would call assimilation, in that you want to subsume and assimilate the people. It's complete eradication, because in the case of assimilation, you're ensuring that everybody enjoys the fruits of the nation. Right. In this case, it's a case where a particular group of people are being completely cut off from everything, and it is based along lines of annexation and colonization by the regime in Yaoundé. And like I've always said, this regime is doing this in defense and in protection of the interest of France.
Right, let's get Wilfred Tassang to join in the conversation. He is on the phone line. Thank you for joining us, Wisad. I hope you have been following in the conversation. There has been discussion that some groups have been calling for a referendum for a federal state. How far has that conversation gone in trying to find common ground with regards to the Francophone and the Anglophone parts of Cameroon?
Thank you very much. I think we have gone past demands for the restoration of the 1961 Federation. That's where
We seem to be having a problem there with Wilfred. We'll try and get a hold of him again and try to reconnect on a better line. We'll come back to studio. Yes. Milan, I was just asking Wilfred the same question I'll ask you, the issue of a referendum. There have been some people who have been calling for this referendum. Why hasn't it happened to try and find common ground?
Well, Wilfred, I think if you listen to what Wilfred was trying to say, that's exactly where we're going. That's way in the past. Where we are, and like I mentioned earlier, the moment the internet was cut from southern Cameroons, which historically used to be a country of its own. That was a declaration of secession. And where we are at the moment is that we are already building a new southern Cameroons with its own government, with its own people, its own constitution and everything. That's where we're going. So talk about a referendum and whatever is of no use at this stage.
Okay, so you're not going for that. You're just going to go ahead with the secession, so to speak.
A couple of days ago, the Southern Cameroonian leadership met. The Southern Cameroonian leadership has been established with a government in place which will be declared in a couple of months. So talk about a referendum is of no use. It's of no consequence at this point. Yaoundé can continue. What we are asking for is the liberation of our young men and women so they can come back home and we can forge a new nation together.
Are you not concerned that if you go ahead with these plans that you're speaking of a secession and getting your own federal state, you could destabilize not just Cameroon, but also the region around the country?
Well, one quick thing, we are not seceding, we are restoring. Right. We are restoring a nation that got its independence in 1961. So that's the one, it's not secession. The second, about destabilizing the region, actually, we are in the process of freeing the African continent, and I'll tell you why. Southern Cameroon forms the pillar that continues to feed French hegemony in Africa. This break might actually help the rest of Francophone Africa to extricate itself from the French stranglehold. So we are trying and we continue to ask the rest of Africa to see this as the first step towards the liberation of Africa in the true sense from French hegemony.
Right. What kind of support do you have? I mean, who are you mobilizing? I know you've spoken of the youth that are coming up, that are obviously is fueling a lot of anger into them, of the students, that are feeling like they're being marginalized. Mm-hmm. Who is behind you with this program that you want to start? Obviously, you can't call it a program, but this political move, if we can call it that.
Well, think first of all about 2-3 million Southern Cameroonians spread all over the world. They're mobilizing. There is a mobilization of 2-3 million people across the world right now. There has been, and the last time I was here, we spoke about a number of African governments, but beyond Africa, a number of governments with whom the leadership is beginning has already started conversation, and we are moving towards the point of fruition. Remember also that we've got a lot of French-speaking African countries which want to just extricate themselves from this French stranglehold, and they see Southern Cameroons as the key towards that.
Are you not worried about the relations between the two, obviously the Francophone and the Anglophone? It can't be a straight-cut line. I'm sure, there's descendants from the other side, there's relations, there's bloodlines that are connected there. How do you plan on dealing with that?
We are not worried at all because the relationship between the entire Cameroonian community continues to be cordial. Here in Johannesburg, just across South Africa, the rest of Cameroon, the relationship has been cordial. You haven't heard for the past 6 months that one single French-speaking Cameroonian has been attacked for one reason or the other. Neither have you heard that a single English-speaking Cameroonian has been attacked. And there are millions living on both sides of the border. So we are not worried about that because we know that even our brothers on the other side of the border are praying and hoping for the day that this would happen.
But then again, you're trying to mobilize Milan from here in South Africa.
Yes.
You're not based in Cameroon. How do you coordinate the two to make sure your dream is realized?
Well, I have just come into the country 2 days ago.
All right.
There is quite a bit of shuffling and traveling across. Like I said, we've got 2 million people mobilizing across the world at the moment. So there is a lot of movement. There is a lot of in and out of the country. And so we are not worried about that. We do know that our people are talking to each other. Cutting off the internet in southern Cameroon does not cut it throughout the rest of the world. So I think it's a bit of you have a regime that is suffering from a bit of short-termism, and there is nothing we can do about that. It was meant to be that way.
Right. Milana Tam, thank you so much for your time. I certainly appreciate it. This conversation will obviously continue as you continue to update us with regards to what's happening there with the Anglophone, Francophone. Certainly we hope that you do find unity and you find some common ground as you go forward.
Thank you, Audrey.
It's finally here. SCBC, the Southern Cameroon Broadcasting Corporation, the voice of the people, a satellite-based TV channel for the people of Southern Cameroon that will bring you news, talk shows, documentaries, movies, music, and much more. Be part of this initiative and represent your region. Email us for more details. SCBC is Kakuf Initiative.